Welcome everyone to the masterclass taught by Silvia Bizio, internationally recognized journalist, film producer, founder of festivals, international festivals. Silvia Bizio is a respected member of Hollywood Foreign Press Association that holds Golden Globes Awards annually.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Hello, everybody. I see some familiar faces, but mostly not. And I hope to see your faces at some point during this conversation. Don't really like, I know we like to call them master classes. We do that in festivals all the time, but then it turns out, even when I do them with major actors and directors, more than master classes, they tend to be conversations, because that's what we like to do. That's what I like to do. And I hope you all feel that this can be a conversation, and you can feel free to ask any kind of questions. To expand a little more on what Gia was saying, I have been based in Los Angeles, California for the last 40 some years. I stayed and lived there after my PhD in sociology and mass communication at UCLA, and quickly realized that my passion was journalism. So that's how I entered the world of Hollywood and entertainment, through journalism. At the beginning, my journalism was more geared to politics, sports, science, anything that could trigger my imagination and attention in Los Angeles. But then it was pretty obvious that I was in the world of cinema, in the cradle of cinema in Los Angeles. And so as I moved up to bigger newspapers, that was the need to talk about what was happening in Hollywood. And I have been a correspondent for La Repubblica daily national newspaper for the last 36 years. I still am as a collaborator, but in the last, let's say 15 years or so, I developed another passion alongside with journalism, which has been the one of festival world. And it is about that festival world that I am going to talk to you about today. In the meantime, I had written a few books, all geared and all centered around the world of cinema, from a long biography of production designer Dante Ferretti, another one about Peter Falk. Remember Peter Falk, along Inspector Colombo, a long interview with him. And I've produced, as Gia was saying, a couple of documentaries and shorts. One which I'm really proud of is based on long interviews that I did over 30 years ago with the poet, writer Charles Bukowski, who lived in San Pedro, California, and I'm proud to say was a friend, and we spent a lot of time and a lot of drinking time together with him and his wife. And one day I recorded a long, many hours video interview with him. And from there I made the movie You Never Had It, A Night with Charles Bukowski. And then I did a short, which was shortlisted for the Academy Awards, called The Night Shift Belongs to the Star. And that went to the Venice Film Festival a few years ago. As I was saying, festivals have been an interest and a passion because my job as a journalist put me in Hollywood, put me in contact with many actors and directors and obviously films. And it was to bring these actors and directors from America and films, not only from America, but also from all over the world, that I started working on several festivals, beginning with the Taormina Film Festival in Sicily. Taormina is one of the oldest festivals in the world, third actually, only to Cannes and Venice. But it used to be the place where the glamorous Hollywood and Italy would go in the 50s and 60s. That's where you would see all the stars lounging by the pools in the hotels or on the beach. And it had the fantastic theater, the Greek theater, a 2,000-year-old open-air amphitheater that still works today as an amazing, probably the most beautiful open-air theater in the world. And that's when I realized how wonderful it is to see movies in that kind of setting, which is not just in movie theaters or small screening rooms, but in a setting that has behind it also history, tradition, a beautiful surrounding. Taormina was, for 10 years, I worked as the US consultant to two different directors, Felicia Laudadio and then Deborah Young. And as US consultant, I brought over there people like Robert De Niro, Michael Douglas, Colin Firth, Jessica Lange, Sam Shepard came at the time. And I realized how wonderful it is for actors and directors to go to a festival, not just to accompany a film, like they do mostly with Cannes and Toronto and Venice for sure, but also to enjoy really an immersion in a different reality and in a different world. And then I became the director of the Taormina Film Festival for a couple of years, and then I started another festival together with some other people last year in Puglia called the Allora Fest. I started in Los Angeles about 16, 17 years ago, festival, a series of Italian films called Cinema Italian Style, that's still going on. Even though I don't direct it anymore. But again, that's given me a sense of what it means to put together a program for a festival, to put together a team. You all know, I don't know if you're all filmmakers, but you all know how important these festivals are. It's interesting because just a few days ago, in talking with the director of the Venice Film Festival, which is about to start in a few days, next week in fact, Alberto Barbera, he told me how he's noticing after this last couple of years, this last few years, between the pandemic and the productions and the stopping of distribution, the slowing down of theater going, how there is more and more a sort of an anxiety and a rush and a sense of wanting to have their movie in a festival, as if festival could be the only launching pad for a film to have a distribution. Now, that is both true and not necessarily true, and that's what we are going to explore in the course of this next 45 minutes or an hour we're going to spend together. You all know some of the biggest festivals in the world. There's no question about it. Cannes, Venice, Toronto, in the last 20 years or so, also the Rome Film Festival. Needless to say, in America, Sundance, it's competition, but more of on a little different level at the same time as Sundance is the more independent film festival, Slamdance. There are festivals in Italy like Taormina, which I mentioned, but also festivals you might not know, like the Giffoni Film Festival, which has been going on for decades and gathers a crowd of thousands of young audiences. Their juries are made of young moviegoers, but when I say young, I really mean young, from 10 years old to 18. And it's incredible to see how many movie stars attend that festival. There are festivals so everybody knows the big ones. But if I told you, and then of course there are festivals in the Eastern, in the Orient, and there are festivals in Korea, Busan, and so on. I'm not that familiar with them, so I'm going to stick with what I know, which are the European and the American festivals. And I'm on the American festivals, I cannot omit to mention also places like the New York Film Festival, Tribeca, which was started by Robert De Niro himself, Or festivals like the one started by Gina Davis in Arkansas, which gives predominance to women filmmakers and diversity filmmakers. If I told you how many festivals there are in the world, it's impossible to count. I'm from Italy, and in Italy alone, it seems like every small town has a festival. Once I think we counted 3,000, not me. Somebody made a suggestion that there were 3,000 festivals in Italy from film, television, shorts, documentaries, and then of course also music, art, all of those. But in talking about cinema, there's a lot there too, including Torino and so on. Festivals, how are they handled? You all know about the anxiety and the importance for a festival to have a premiere film, meaning a film that hasn't shown around the world or in the country where the festival is taking place before. That is very important because that is what attracts audiences, and that is what attracts the press to talk about a film that people have not seen already, films that have not been on your on Netflix or on Amazon or on your local TV stations. So it's very important in a festival to show new films. And also one of the very important elements in festivals, especially in the last few decades, have been the masterclasses, so-called encounters of audience and press with the stars attending. As I was saying, it's very important for a festival director to find premieres and to create a program. Now, these programs are what makes a festival different and what gives a festival its unique aspect. Whenever you start a new festival, do you think about in terms of a theme? Do you think in terms of necessarily having premieres? Is it just cinema? Is it just television? Is it a mixture of both? Do you show documentaries? Do you show shorts, features? The biggest festivals like Toronto, Venice, Cannes, as you know, show all of these things. But sometimes, like I'm now working on a smaller festival in Matera, in the region of Basilicata, it's only in its third year, but because director Patty Jenkins of Wonder Woman has accepted my invitation to come, and Robin Wright most likely will come, and they, of course, have chosen, Patty Jenkins has chosen Matera in Basilicata in southern Italy as the setting for her film Wonder Woman. So they shot some of the film there. Matera is, of course, the place where Mel Gibson shot The Passion and where the opening sequence of the recent James Bond film was. It's an historical town, which if you look at it from far away or if you walk through its little streets, it really could pass for Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, and that is why so many movies are set there. Because of the kind of guests that we selected, we thought it would be really good to have a team geared towards women in action filmmaking, and women. So we are selecting movies directed by women. We'll have master classes with women, and so forth. Each festival has its own reality. This year, Alberto Barbera was telling me that, of course, in Venice there will be attention to Ukraine filmmaking. There will be attention more and more to virtual reality and immersive experiences. So there are even feature films in 3D. With the big glasses, not just 3D, but with the virtual reality kind of glasses. So all of these create an atmosphere and a clear identity of a festival. Now, we were discussing how important these festivals are or were to towards the distribution of a film. Are they really? Yes, they are. Think about films like Rome by Alfonso Cuarón, which went on to win the Golden Globe and the Oscar as Best Film, and also for Cuarón to win Best Director. That film won the Golden Lion in Venice in, if I'm not mistaken, in 2018. And it started its long, and it was a Netflix film, and Netflix invested clearly a lot on the promotion, but it was in Venice that it got the first attention. A similar trajectory had the film Parasite, which from South Korea, which won which won the Palme d'Or in Cannes in 2019, and then went on to win Best Golden Globe and Best Oscar as an international film, and also Best Direction. Sometimes I was in Venice when we saw Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. I don't know if you saw that, a fantastic film. We didn't know anything about that film. I remember I was thinking, how can a film have such a long title? We'll never remember it. Yes, we did remember it, because not only the movie made a lot of sense, the title made a lot of sense, but then it went on to have an incredible success story. As soon as Venice announces its lineup, every year there are the discussion in the press, oh, here are we going to see the movies that we will hear about when it comes to the Oscars. This year already there is talk about the Aronofsky's movie, the Noah Baumbach movie, and, for example, about the Ana de Armas portrayal of Marilyn Monroe in Blonde. Apparently she is fabulous. I will see that on the 8th of September in Venice, and I'm really looking forward to, because I think Alberto Barbera has a very, very keen eye on talent, on amazing talent, both Italian and foreign films. So clearly there are also many surprises. You go to festivals, and I must tell you, and this happens in every festival, half of the time you come out of a film and you think, why was this film chosen? We can't expect to see masterpieces or films that everybody likes. And some of the surprise wins in some of the festivals might not be what you would expect. On the other hand, where else, if not at a festival, you can see so many different products, so many different ideas and trends. I was asking Barbera, for example, this year, what did he see as a trend? And he said he was surprised how after 2 years of pandemia, he was expecting and not necessarily hoping, but he was expecting more of a sense of a levity among the products. And instead he said, most of the movies this year will be and are pretty grim and gloomy and heavy, and reasoning about what the world has been going through in these last few years. How do you get a film into a festival? That is always the big question. Keep in mind that places like Sundance receive over 3,000 submissions every year. And even Slamdance, festivals like those, receive tremendous amount of submissions. Venice this year, usually they will get 4 or 5, they will start looking at films in March, maybe, before the festival is always in the beginning of September, as you know. And usually they see from March on 4 or 5 movies a day, and then they stop for a while, and then they go back and look at them and look at more films. This year they started in November, and the submissions were even more than they could handle in terms of watching them. So if they can see 4 or 5 films a day and they're getting 15 in every day, you can imagine how difficult the competition is. And of course, not all of them are wonderful, and that makes it really difficult for a festival director to select, to decide way in advance what to select. So to be able to be selected by a festival, I really have to tell you, it's both a matter of luck in many cases. Clearly, you send to a lot, you submit your films to a lot of festivals because the hope is that it will be seen by at least some of the committees. And then you really need to arrive at the festival with some notion of how to promote your film. So unfortunately, the hiring of a PR company, it's incredibly useful because they know how to connect with journalists who then will go see the film and write about them and do the interviews. And those are incredibly important, as everybody knows. Should you attend the festival? Yes. Festivals are, if you love cinema, there's nothing like a festival. And if you don't have, to see as much as you can. If you don't have a film there and you don't have to promote a film there, that's even better, more reason, because you can really do a full immersion and watch as many as 5-6 films a day, which is only during a film festival you can do, of course, starting at 8 in the morning and until the last screening at midnight. Not easy to navigate a festival. The bigger ones have, there is always a challenge in terms of getting tickets. You need to get them in advance. Now, let alone now with the COVID issues, not easy at all. Accommodations, getting the accreditations done. But at the same time, there's nothing like a film festival to, as I was saying, to immerse yourself in the world of cinema. So, and then there are also there is also the fun aspect of watching celebrities and the red carpet and the crowds and the fun part of a film festival. That's kind of a rough, a general view, more or less, that I expressed in the last half an hour about how it works. And by the way, I'm sure you're all familiar with the ways in which you submit to festivals, like Film Freeway, which has now become the biggest way. It's fantastic because both for the festival directors and organizers and for the filmmakers, you don't even have to necessarily go out. I mean, unless, of course, you are Rome or Venice or Cannes, then you go out and you reach out to the big directors and the studios and you ask for the specific films that a director is working on. But otherwise, films do come to you, and there is a platform where to put all your films and to put your films and know that it will be looked at. Gia, by the way, is my friend forever in Los Angeles, and thank you for the opportunity, but I would really love now to be able to, if we can, to have more of a interactive conversation.
Yes, Sylvia, thank you so much for this wonderful information that you gave us. What I would like to start with, and if you don't mind, I'll be the first one to ask a question before we give mics to people, and I'm sure they will have questions for you. So, as you know, as everyone knows, over here in Hollywood, the films from all over the world in foreign language are more and more accepted by the professionals, more and more accepted by the buyers, more and more accepted, and actually have been always accepted by important festivals and also awards such as Golden Globes and Oscars, obviously. But what I'd like to start with, the no-nos for foreign filmmakers. What are those mistakes that you see often when you watch a movie in foreign language? Can you please elaborate on that?
I'm a stickler for not having a film way too long. And I think that besides the action movies that come from America, which have now become way too long, sometimes a foreign movie can be long. If we can talk about mistakes, maybe trying to be too American and not respect enough the culture of your country. If I see a movie from an international, from a country that's not America, I really like to see the country, the stories behind it, the culture, the traditions, I saw some movies from Kazakhstan, by the way, which I loved because they were showing me an aspect of history I didn't know. I always want to learn. I thought the movie last year, A Yak in the Classroom from Bhutan, was fantastic, because it revealed the world that how many times can you walk with a teacher in Bhutan for 10 days to reach the classroom and then see what it's like to be there and see the people who are not actors, who are not, they didn't even have proper lighting or playback equipment. I was transported completely in that kind of film. Those films, those I'm very grateful to the fact that the submissions, each country submits, those are for the Oscars, of course, each country submits a film, and we end up also as Golden Globe voters seeing those submissions. As you know, with the Golden Globes, we don't have that rule of only one film per country. We can see as many as 5, 6. There can be as many as anybody wants to submit in terms of foreign films for the Golden Globes. And then you risk losing them in the mix because there's so many. That film, I was very... Sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but what I was trying to say is that I really appreciate when I see a foreign film from another country that brings me, that carries me in the culture, in the history, in the costumes, the looks, the different aspects of a country.
What about what I see often is unreadable subtitles? Can you talk about that a little bit?
That is very true. Subtitles are so incredibly important. Of course, not understanding languages outside of Italian, English, Spanish, a bit of French, I have to read the subtitles for every language. And if they're too fast, too small, often, and that is really a big mistake when the subtitles are blended in the color of the film in the background. And really, sometimes they become unreadable. It's so important to add an extra work to how you place the subtitles, because you have to keep in mind that if you're sending a film from any country, but even African countries, Asian countries, you have a lot of the international audience has to be able to read the subtitles, and the subtitles should be definitely often shorter than the talked part, but also placed in a way that can be read. So if you have a whitish background, no point in putting a white subtitle. You won't be able to read it, or put them on the face, or you know, it's when I was at the film festival in South Korea a few years ago. Jeonjun, I think it was called, and I loved it because they have to show the films in their original language with English subtitles, which is a must for an international audience, but also in South Korean and sometimes even in a different language. And they had them in blocks. So they had a block on the bottom for one of the languages, and then they had a side where the screen, the look of the film stopped, and it was literally a side on black with the white subtitles on it. And I thought it was very interesting because you can glance, you know, according to which language subtitles you need to read, and every film was like that. Needless to say, you know, I could only read the English, and not maybe Japanese, or maybe that's certainly South Korean was always there. And I thought that was very clever, and I also realized how much work that went into that. So I think, Gia, that's a very important question, one that we often forget to pay attention to. In festivals, you know, one of the things when I organize a festival, one of the things that I really try to do, and sometimes the budget just doesn't allow, is to have a second projector that will, with a screen, you know, with a strip of an electronic strip below the screen, so that you can project the subtitles from a computer on this little screen. So it's you don't have the subtitles right on the film. You can read them underneath, and that is nice because you can read them well, and second, because they're always the same, and moreover, you don't have that difficulty that I was talking to you about, you know, the white on white or the. So, but that involves an extra expense, because a festival would need to have a second projector. So we always end up asking for the subtitles to be imprinted on the DCP, and that, or on the film, on the ProRes, but that involves for the producers or the directors to really pay attention on where those subtitles are placed. Very important.
Okay, so thank you for that, Sylvia, because I personally, when I watch foreign films, if I see that subtitles are unreadable, I just turn it off myself, because there's no point.
Right. You don't understand. If you don't speak the language, you don't understand. So it's like might as well have a silent movie.
Yes. The other thing I was gonna ask you, so let's say you are a foreign filmmaker, and you have made a movie that now you're considering applying for one of the, I don't know, major, maybe not so major festivals, but your end goal is to also have one of those award campaigns, let's say Golden Globes, Oscars, if you're lucky, of course. As we all know, Oscars is tricky because you have to be the country's selection. How do you attract the attention of the committee, of the voting members, and not necessarily just the Golden Globes? I'm talking about important festivals as well, because you're I know that you're very active in important festivals, especially in Italy, and like you said in the beginning, a lot of Italian festivals are important. So how important it is for a filmmaker to begin and to be accepted into A category festivals, or is it okay if you begin with a smaller festival where you have more chances to be accepted?
You know, smaller festivals don't necessarily have the amount of press and attention that bigger festivals have, but at the same time, if your movie does win an award in a smaller festival and it's not one of the hundreds of films selected at a very large festival, you might even be better off. I think I think it's really nice that Torino or Taormina, in Italy at least, have. But then and you have film festivals like San Sebastian, in Spain, or and they're incredibly respectable festivals. Nothing wrong with that. And if you win an award, that can begin your campaign. Because if you are in a very, very big festival and you don't win any award, your film is just as likely, might just be lost in the mix. So in a way, it's probably better to have your movie win an award and be noticed at a smaller festival than not being noticed at all in a very big one. But clearly, you don't, when you go to Cannes, I mean, you see how many hundreds of journalists there are. Venice is the same. And I'm not talking about photographers on the red carpet. I'm talking about journalists who actually write reviews and go to the press conferences and write about them. Keep in mind that even, I notice it too, even in a festival like Venice, and there are hundreds of journalists, and there are, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 opportunities of press interviews, of press conferences and interviews for a movie that's been shown to the press. A newspaper will select 2 or 3 the next day to write about. You don't, a journalist does not even have the space on a newspaper to write about every single festival, that's a film that's shown every day in a festival. So even then, what brings the attention? The presence of a star, always. There's no way around it. If there is a star and the star gives an interview, then there will be a lot more attention given. I have a friend now, Cecilia Minucchi, Italian. She directed a film during the pandemic, a really clever, small, low-budget film, all done from, she was in her house, the actors were in their houses, all done with iPhones and iPads. But the actors are Bob Odenkirk and Danny Houston and Radha Mitchell, great actors. Well, now, if Bob Odenkirk, who we know is the actor of Better Call Saul, if he goes to Venice, there will be a lot of attention to the film because he will give interviews and journalists will write about it. If he doesn't, or none of the actors go, the film loses to, run the risks of being lost in the mix with so many others. And yet it's a delightful film, a really, really lovely, nice film that if somebody wants to spend a couple of hours watching a delightful film, I would recommend, go. It's enjoyable. It's very enjoyable. But if a journalist has to choose between a film where there is no interview, right after, and one in which you have, a star, they tend to do that. And I'm talking as a journalist, and that is unfortunately the sad reality of what filmmaking is.
Okay, well, yes. And so how does one attract attention? So you spoke, and I'm really glad that you said that, about the importance of having an actual campaign and the PR campaign to a project. Now, when we talk about foreign films, oftentimes it involves a very small budget, small to none. And it is my experience, and I know this, and you can talk about this. Starting with a smaller film festival sometimes is also good because people who vote on those small festivals and the big festivals, they all talk. And if there's a really, really good movie, they're gonna talk to each other. They're gonna create what's called buzz, and buzz is very, very important because how else are you going to attract attention? Let's say amongst 250 or 300 films that are submitted for, I don't know, one category in, I don't know, Golden Globes or something like that, something important. So, Sylvia, how does one filmmaker really attract attention? What are the important elements that make you, Sylvia, for example, watch someone's movie?
You know, Gia, there are no formulas on this. There are no secrets that one can have that will always work. It's a gamble every time, and we know it. Realistically, it is a gamble, and I don't have a formula, but I can tell you that if you have an important actor or actress, you have to try and get them to promote your movie. That's very important. If you don't have a lot of budget, we all know how big social media can be. I'm not using it much, so I don't expect me to tell you how, but I know that it works, and that it can be very helpful. Even a small PR campaign doesn't have to cost an enormous amount of money. What costs, obviously, and we know, are television advertising, those spots, advertisings on the newspaper, and we know that. But if you can get a journalist or a reviewer on an important paper to look at your film and write a review, he or she can make a difference. And that won't cost anything except for a little connection. So having we often use in some of our festivals in Italy, we use smaller PR companies that don't really cost much. Obviously, they don't have the big impact that some of the bigger, more expensive ones have. But sometimes I wonder, is it worth it to really spend 10, 20, 30,000, $50,000 on a campaign, not a campaign. Campaign can cost a lot, way more, but even for the presence of a film in a festival, when maybe with 2,000 or 3,000 you can have a good, a good PR person who knows even just a few key journalists and media to invite to a screening. You don't have to offer big dinners or anything. You just, make sure that access to the screening is available, and that if there is a need for an interview, it can be done. That if they ask for photos, you have the photos. You don't know how many times, I've lost stories because they never send photos, and then the paper if they have to choose between a film where they can have some production stills and another where there are no production stills, So those are very important to have, and that stuff doesn't necessarily cost that much. To have the production, a good production, high-res production stills, a trailer, a well-cut trailer. The other day I was actually I'm just coming back from Ireland, and I was in Belfast, in Northern Ireland, where a friend of mine, an editor, moved just a couple of years ago, and I saw a trailer of a documentary that they're putting together, and the trailer was so incredibly well cut that I said, whoa, after 2 minutes, I said, I want to see this movie. So, these things are all very, very important. And I think to have these assets and these elements are so crucial to a movie, and they don't necessarily cost a lot. It takes talent to cut a good trailer with a good strong music that gives you, or not, but that gives you a sense of the film. So as I said, there are no formulas, but you don't necessarily have to spend an enormous amount of money on at least a first PR campaign. Obviously, if you're aiming for the Oscars after the nomination, that's a different story.
Yes, and I appreciate what you're saying, because in addition to PR campaign, I just wanted to clarify, and in addition to PR campaign that can cost whatever the money, uh, filmmakers can actually also do some additional steps as far as like creating and bringing attention to their films, especially if their films talk about some important subject matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And
And
I'm really glad that you talked about important elements such as really well cut trailer and a really good still photography that can be attached to PR campaigns, can be attached to the materials that are sent to the press as well,
mhm,
because all those elements can help create a difference.
absolutely, absolutely. And when you have a press list, send the movie or send a link. You don't know how many times I say, okay, can I have a link to this movie? Let me answer. And then, send the link to your movie. Do you want your movie to be seen? It's okay. Protect it, send the password protected, whatever you need to do. But don't be too shy in showing if you have a strong product. Sometimes, I'm surprised at how beautiful some films that I know nothing about can be, and I would have never seen if they hadn't sent me the link, you know.
Yeah,
And
some
I'm
of them
talking as
you've
a
seen
journalist.
because some of them you've seen because I brought them to your attention. But with that, I think Sylvia, you okay if we start accepting questions from
Of course,
audience?
of course. I would love to
All
see
right.
the audience. I see
Yeah.
names.
Okay. So everyone, whoever has a question, please raise your hand and we'll accept you to accept you and let you ask the question. Oljas, please unmute your mic.
Hi.
Hi, thank you very much, Sylvia, for all this information. It's very useful. I'm very grateful. Yeah, my name is Oljaz Bayalbayev, and I'm a filmmaker from Kazakhstan. I'm a film director, actually. I just shot a feature film, and to be honest with you, I never even considered that I'm going to send my films to festivals. Um, so, could you please give me a little, not
Why
advice,
not?
but
Why not?
see, that's the question is though, um, what is the best part of being able to send your films to festival? I mean, I never thought about it.
So, what do you have in mind in terms of getting your film to be seen by your audience? What were you thinking about? How are you planning to have it seen? Do you have a distribution?
Oh well, I was thinking to bring my film to film markets first of all. So I believe festivals probably going to help me to do that.
And many festivals have a film market, unless you go to that Gia, what's it called? The big film market in Santa Monica,
The American Film Market.
Brava.
AFM.
That doesn't
AFM.
have a festival. That is only a market. There is also a market for television in France, only market. But otherwise, Cannes, Rome, Venice doesn't have a market, but Toronto, my goodness, those are total markets. And why not? If you're going to a market, might as well try the festival that goes along with the market.
Very interesting. Thank you very much. I also heard that to get to a particular festival, especially the big ones, I need to know somebody from there that is gonna help me to get to festival. Is that true?
That's what I was saying before. It takes a lot of luck, but it also takes, if you know somebody, it's easier. That is a reality of the beast, and there is no going around it. It helps if you know somebody, but I want to trust the fact that if you put your film on Film Freeway and a committee from a festival clicks on it that they watched it, I want to believe that they watched it. So if you feel that you have a good product in your hand, submit it to several festivals. There is a cost involved, but not that much. If you submit them early enough, um, you know, the cost is maybe $50, $60 per festival. Some of them are even free, like Venice Days, which is a section of the Venice Film Festival. The submission is free. Some other festivals also are free. Usually there is a small fee. And certainly if you submit it to 10 festivals, you know, it adds up. But I think it's well worth the expense. And then do a little research on the festivals you submitted to, and maybe you know, ask around in the country where you're submitting. Do you know anybody? Can you make sure? They're not going to select it just because you say, you know, please look at my film. But at least you will have more of a chance that your film will be actually seen and paid attention to. You don't know how many times I'm even friends with directors of festivals, and I say, please look at my friend's film, you really need, and then they, you know, they see it, but then they didn't select it. So just to make sure, just to ask, it doesn't necessarily guarantee you any acceptance, but I would push for certainly. I would at least encourage you to submit your films to festival and not necessarily just the markets.
Okay,
and what
so
film did you make? I love Kazakhstan. I was there last year. Yeah.
it's a horror film, a horror,
Oh,
you know.
wow. Then markets are good for those.
Okay. So let's say if, for example, I submit my film and it, you know, the film actually gets to some festivals, you're saying that basically is going to help me a lot to save, to sell the film worldwide, right?
I think so. That and being at the film markets, yes, both of them. I'm saying don't rule one out.
Also, Oljas, don't forget that a lot of those festivals have sales agents and distributors attending. And Sylvia, that brings a question for me. So sometimes if the movie is not accepted into the competition, does that make sense to make a screening at certain festivals? Kind of like we did way back in the past at Biography. I found it extremely useful because I was approached and then later sold that movie to Italian distributor.
Yeah. No, of course. Each festival has a section in competition, and then there are so many movies that are not in competition and that could attract attention. Absolutely. Like even in Venice, that's coming. I keep talking about Venice just because in 3 days I'm going there, and so it's all Venice in my mind. You know, what's in the schedule, what's in the program. You know, how do I, as of Saturday, you really, even as a journalist or as a film goer, as an audience, you have to book, you know, your own. Even if I have a full pass, you still have to book your film. So you have to book your entrance to the film, and that's a challenge. You can't just expect to get in line and get in, because that doesn't happen anymore in most festivals. Big festivals, the smaller ones, yes, but there are, you know, the new documentary by Oliver Stone on nuclear energy. That's out of competition. It's a documentary. It's going to be shown at the end of the festival in Venice, but it's not in any kind of competitions. But I expect major players will be there and will look at it, and I expect that it will be sold after being seen there. So, yes.
All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Yes. My name is Eljaz Rahim. I'm from Kazakhstan also. I'm a filmmaker, and also at this point I'm more closer to the producing side. We just came from Gifoni. We screened our short film over there, and it's amazing that you mentioned that film festival, because it blew our mind, to be honest, in terms of how response can be so honest and so, I guess, so beneficial from young audience. Anyway,
Yeah.
my question,
It's amazing, right? I'm glad you went there. Yeah, really glad.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask about celebrities. We touched a little bit of that theme, and you said that it's really important to have some stars, I guess, in the movie who can help to promote the film. Could you please share your maybe experiences or your thoughts on dealing with them and communicating, let's say, with A-listers when you're about to make an ultra or moderate low budget film or something below low budget? I know that it's not easy, but what is the best way to, I guess, to start the communication, the actual communication, before you have a chance to show them the screenplay and make sure that they can read it, and finally you can cast them?
Well, that's the $1 million question always, and it's also the famous circular, how do you get a film financed unless you have a big actor or actress in it? And how do you get a big actress unless you have the financial wherewithal and the backing behind it to make them an offer? Because it's true that you don't get to actors unless you really know them, except unless you go through their agents, and their agents are not going to pay any attention, GNOs, right? Unless they can see some cash for them, which means big cash for their clients. And if they don't see that, they won't even bring the project to their clients. That said, we hear all the time about big A-list actors accepting a very small project by sometimes even a first-time director who nobody had heard before, because they love the story. How did they get to read the story? It got sent to them, it found their way in the mail, it got sent to them through a friend, or somehow their agent was smart enough to say, I know there is no money involved in this, but I think you will like this. And that can happen. That can happen. And if you do have a really good story, chances are that your story will find its way to somebody who will pay attention. And I'm not saying you have to have a great, an A-lister actor to make sure that your movie is successful. You don't have to. How many movies, now, obviously on the spur of the moment, I can't think of any to mention right now, but how many movies have we seen which was fantastic, and they were totally unknown actors? Then they might have become big because of that unknown movie, unknown little projects that was so good and made the actors famous. So it's not easy, but if you have a good story, also you have each country has, I think, has an important either a government entity. It's either a film commission. In Italy, we have film commissions for every region, and I know Kazakhstan has one, and Korea has one. To submit also the screenplays and get help financing from the film commissions. It's I always encourage to do that, because it can be very helpful, rather than just try to do it all on your own. It can be helpful.
I'm gonna add a little bit, Iljas, to your question, to what Sylvia just said. So I'm one of those filmmakers that have worked with stars on super small budgets. Years ago, and Sylvia remembers that movie, it was on women's issue. So it always helps to find the particular celebrity who is passionate about the cause that you're showing in your movie. So let's say you are addressing women's issue, or you're addressing ecological issues, or you're addressing mental illness, or anything that is an important subject for society overall. And then you find the particular star or stars who could be interested in that subject matter. And then what you do is you you try to find a way to talk to the agent or manager. Sometimes it's much easier to talk to a manager than the agent. And you plan your shoot in a way that is at most
Convenient.
at most comfortable for that star. For example, if the star lives, let's say in Los Angeles, you plan to shoot in Los Angeles at the schedule that would be comfortable for that particular star. Of course, first things first, like Sylvia said, it is important to have them read the script. So make sure that your script is amazing. So when they read it, if you have that chance that they read the script, make sure it's so good that they can't say no. And approach stars that are passionate about the subject matter. That's, I think that Sylvia, please tell me, what do you think of, about that?
No, that's absolutely true. Of course, now this borderlines into the expertise of a producer, which Gia is, and I'm not. So she knows more about this, I can tell you, from my experience kind of firsthand. Also having some friends, actors and directors, you know. Several times I have suggested to some friends actors, would you read this? And a couple of times it happened that they say, sure, send it over, and they'll read it. Some of the times they say, send it to my agent, I will let them know that I know about it, and it still has to go through their agent. So, but what Gia is saying about finding the subjects that people are passionate about, yeah, it's always very important. What kind of films do you make?
We make feature films mostly. Time at a time, we make short films that are really strong. And I think Chicken that we made just recently, with which we went to Gifoni, then to Malise Film Festival, and it's still on the calendar where we keep going further, such as we're going to Sharjah in October. And it's great how little short film can bring you so much exploration and so much that you could have not expect. Sometimes you expect that from feature film, but then boom, you know, little short film opens up something what you couldn't imagine before. And that's, I guess, the essence of just keep trying and keep making the best that you could.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so very much for your answer, for your time.
All right.
Thank
so next one is Nisibeli. Nisibeli is from Kazakhstan as well.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you to Hollywood Film Academy for organizing this masterclass. Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Gauhar. My name is Nesibele. I'm from Kazakhstan. I have two questions. First question about language. In Kazakhstan, we have two official languages, Kazakh and Russian. Now, Kazakh filmmakers are denied at festival because the film are partially or completely in Russian language. What can you advise in such a situation? It's the first question. And second, what is the situation at the Golden Globe Festival with the boycott of everything Russian? Thank you.
Well, from what I understand, I didn't know about just the Russian language. From what I understand recently, because of all the reasons that we know in the world, there have been a denial of Russian productions. I didn't know that the films in the Russian language from a film in Russian language from Kazakhstan could be denied access. That I didn't know, and I'm surprised about. And I don't think it's fair. I was in Kazakhstan, and I know how there are two languages there, and it doesn't make any sense because Kazakhstan is not Russia, so and it's not a Russian production. From what you're telling me, right? And as far as the Golden Globes, we haven't had a Golden Globe last year, so we'll see what happens in the next one once we announce if and when we have a Golden Globe, which I'm pretty sure we will. and then we will see what the status of the world is as the moments come, as the times develop.
Isabelle, does that answer your question?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so next one is Kevin Fu. Kevin, please unmute your mic.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Sylvia. I'm Kevin Fu, a filmmaker of sorts, but big fan of Gia and Sylvia. And I have a comment and a question to Sylvia. Comment is on the questions I've heard from the young filmmakers about how do you get exposure, how do you get started. I think you're looking at the answer there, Hollywood Film Academy, where Gia and people like Sylvia and all the other people who will be in the master classes can be a really great portal for you to work through. So bear that in mind. Question to Sylvia, a little bit personal, so sorry. You're a legend in the industry, and we can see from this wonderful conversation we've had just how much experience you've had. What keeps you going? What gets you up in the morning? What inspires you?
Insatiable curiosity of knowing more. And I'm very blessed with being an optimist and a kind of a solar kind of person. I always wake up in the morning thinking that it's going to be a great day. So that helps. And what keeps me going is even in the face sometimes of having had very frustrating experiences with some festivals and budgets, and it's really the pleasure of bringing so much joy to people who come. I was just in Calabria. That's one of my other little festivals that I love. In Calabria, also in southern Italy, the Magna Grecia Film Festival, which was started by good friend Gianvito Casadonte and Ettore Scola. You all remember probably the old director Ettore Scola, a legend for us in Italy. And when I bring their big actors or directors from America, and I can see the people coming to this open-air arena that holds 3,000 seats, and they're all literally drinking from their mouth, listening and wanting to, and it's not the paparazzi or, I want to see a celebrity up close. No, it's really they want to see, and they want to know, and they want to hear. And that is a lot of fun. I must say that it's... that is something that gives me a lot of pleasure. So energy and but curiosity. I'm always curious. That's why I never stop traveling. I'm always running around going,
No, yes.
My family thinks I'm insane, but my friends. But I could be on the go all the time. And
we know that. We know that. Thanks, Sylvia. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know for a fact, for all the years that I know you, Sylvia, you've always been so passionate about films. All these little parties that you and I have, we always talk about films, and that's how we live, how we breathe, and continue doing what we do. So next question goes to George Migrella from Georgia. George, please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm George.
Hi.
George Megarelishvili from Georgia. So I'm an actor and director too. So my question is, the film Bullet, where I play a leading role, has received 7 awards and has been nominated in different... At this message, we are in a selection in Marbella Film Festival. It's a great news.
I'm not sure I understood the film either, because you're not... Bullet?
Bullet is our film. I am leading
I
role.
haven't seen it. I'm sorry. Oh, how do I get to see it?
We are going to submit this film, and director is a woman, my friend. She's a great director, and she's very talented. And so she made this film, and last 2 months we has received 7 awards and nomination in world festivals, and we are going to submit in your festival. And I'm interested if these awards can affect the selection in the Golden Globes list.
Yes, of course. All the awards are always very important. And when the submission is done, it's very important to say winner of and winner of all
Yeah.
the laurels and the what we call the laurels, you know, the laurels in a festival.
Of course, yeah.
You should all know when somebody asks you for a laurel, you need to know that the laurels are those two, like from the laurel tree plant, you know, the leaves that surround the name of, anyway, the logo of the festival. And those are extremely important because it gives you immediately a sense, oh, this film has already been noticed.
And I have one question more. So I told you I'm a director too, and last in a one room, it's about there, and it's like you know, based on the novel Samuel Beckett's novel Waiting Godot, you know.
Waiting for Godot, yes.
But unfortunately, this film 40 minutes. You know, 40 minutes. Can I submit the film if it's not you know, 1 hour and more? It's a 40 minutes film.
14?
Yeah, 40.
40.
Yeah,
40 is the category that runs borderline between short and feature, and it's always a very difficult length. So each festival will tell you whether they accept, you know, they want. That 40 minutes is the exact limitation.
Yeah, I know.
So if it's 39, it's a short. If it's 41, it becomes a feature.
Maybe.
But you submit, you submit it and then they decide. It's an interesting length.
Nice to meet you, and I appreciated you. And I know your films, documentary films about Bukowski, and I made too the Bukowski performance in Georgia in different languages, English, Ukrainian, Russian, and Georgian. It was a great. There was a lot, were a lot of teenagers. It was a great. I love Bukowski.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. Thank you. I see another hand that's Asil from Kazakhstan. But before we get there, before we get to Asil, Sylvia, I think it's important to sort of address the issue when you guys are, you know, applying for festivals or awards like Golden Globes. Please read, you know, the important, like what type of movies, the length, for example, which is what George was talking about, what's accepted, what, you know, so you don't make mistakes and get disappointed later.
Right. No, it's very important. Each festival has its own rules, and the awards also. The Golden Globes, for example, you know, we don't accept shorts, we don't accept documentaries. So no point in, and at 40 minutes, I have to look at our rules, but I don't believe at 40 minutes it's considered.
No. It's not.
No.
Okay, so let's get to Asil. Asil, please unmute your mic.
Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to talk to you. So I have a tricky question for you. So as you said, you need to be a lucky one, and you need to have someone who can talk about you or who knows you well, to attract more attention and attract some.
Well, I'm saying these things help.
Yes. So the tricky question is, can we send a script to you so we know you from the masterclass?
Excuse me, Asil. This question is not ethical. Well, this is the masterclass. If you have any inquiries as far as, by the way, Anybody, if you guys have questions or inquiries about, you know, the campaigns for awards or festivals, if you seek assistance of any sort, please write us at info@hollywoodfilmacademy.com. But this masterclass is not to, you know, it's not the place where you can ask, you know, to directly connect to our speakers. Thank you for understanding.
Okay, thank you. But can I say in a different words then?
Sure.
Most of the words you should apply not directly, but like through the distributors. Do you have any, or can you recommend any list of distributors whom you can talk to?
Again, not really. That's not my expertise. There are so many platforms. You know, these days, as you know, the television platforms are the most sought after and the most important. You know, from Netflix to Amazon to HBO to Hulu, they put on their on the screen so many thousands of hours of material. So, and they, you know, it's not easy to get them to buy your film or your television projects, and sometimes the money they give you, it's very little. But there is choice, you know, there are choices, and there is certainly an hunger and a need for material. So it seems like, you know, filmmakers tell me we're in a good time in terms of getting your product seen, because there is so much need for a lot of material given the incredible competition among distributors and platforms.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, and also depending on who you work with, Aselia, you didn't, you know, present yourself, but I'm assuming you're a filmmaker from Kazakhstan. I can recognize a Kazakh name. What I would personally recommend, and also what we sort of, I mean, certainly Sylvia talked about that earlier, and I also did. When you put your movie through festivals, small, big, or whatever, when you have your campaign manager, for example, if your movie attracts enough attention, and let me dial it back. So when you put your movies through the film festivals or film award campaigns, chances are, especially with the festivals, there will be some sales agents and distributors in the audience. And if you are there present personally, which Sylvia advised you to be there with possibly your directors and your stars, you can also work the crowd and bring attention of those distributors and sales agents to your movie to come and watch. And then if they like your movie, they will offer you the distribution or sales deal. Does that answer your question, Aselia?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. All right. I don't see any more hands up. Anybody wants to ask more questions, please raise a hand.
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready. If you guys have time, I'll be fast. I guess the very crucial and beneficial question for everybody who work on the film field would be, how did the industry change after the pandemic? Of course, we know the tendency, we know certain things that are open, but maybe there are some regulations or some, I don't want to say about rumors, but more, what would be the crucial information to keep in mind for this time, for next, let's say, couple of years? Because since even Sylvia, you mentioned that some regulations in Oscars and the Golden Globes are changed. If I'm allowed to ask that, and if you can respond to that question, that'll be great.
the major changes, both in festivals and in terms of award campaigns, as you very well know, are the acceptance of the films that have not had necessarily a long theatrical distribution and are gone directly to platforms.
Right.
And that is the major change. Other than that, no, there haven't been. So the big change is what your release format is. And also last year, because of COVID, we expanded the time in which a film could be submitted. And hopefully we'll get back to normal soon. But, COVID has changed tremendously a lot of stuff. I'm not sure that we'll ever go back to what it was before. I think people are anxious and happy to go back to cinemas and theaters, but at the same time, there is a bit of, how many theaters have closed, and there is a bit of a hesitation to find yourself in a big crowded space inside. So maybe outside areas and arenas will start gathering more attention. But that's in terms of the release, the theatrical kind of release. In terms of rules, I can't think of many more except what I mentioned.
Gotcha.
So as far as the campaigns, though,
thank you.
it's changed, right? Sylvia, meaning like the Golden Globes, we don't, the filmmakers don't really do screening at theaters anymore. It's all digital, correct?
Not necessarily. We still have some screenings, but mostly they are. We really welcome digital more and more, and it's important. Yeah. With that, I think I need to say goodbye.
Yes.
My time is up, and I'm expected somewhere. I hope I've answered most of your questions. I hope to see all your films as both as a journalist and as film and a festival organizer.
Sylvia, thank you so much for a fabulous masterclass today. And for our participants, thank you for being here today. And, remember, Hollywood Film Academy is the platform that brings professionals from Hollywood to you. Thank you, and I'll see you soon.